The desert stretched endlessly under a bleeding sunset, a sea of red sand and silent stone where the wind carried whispers of the dead. Private Samuel Carter sat beside his dying horse, his uniform torn, his canteen empty. 3 days lost from his patrol, 3 days of blistering sun and cold nights that cut through his bones. He had joined the U.S. Army for honor, but out here, honor didn't feed a man, or save him from dying alone in the middle of nowhere. He pressed his hand against his ribs, where a cracked rib throbbed under every breath. His tongue was thick and dry, and his vision danced with heat mirages. The horizon shimmered, and for a moment he thought he saw movement, shadows, dancing in the distance. Then he heard it, hooves, quiet, rhythmic, getting closer. He reached for his revolver, but his arm trembled. The weapon slipped from his hand into the sand. When the figure appeared, he thought at first he was seeing an angel. She rode bareback, dark braids whipping in the wind, eyes like storm clouds over a canyon. She was Apache, no older than 16, her face painted with streaks of white and red. Around her neck hung a necklace of bone and turquoise. She reined in her horse and looked down at him, her gaze wary but not cruel. "You're far from your fort, soldier," she said softly in broken English. Samuel swallowed hard. "I was separated from my unit. Water, please." She hesitated. He could see it in her eyes, the weight of history, of raids and massacres, of promises broken by men who looked like him. But she dismounted, pulling a small leather pouch from her saddlebag. Kneeling, she lifted his head gently and poured a trickle of cool water between his cracked lips. It felt like heaven. He coughed, choking on it, but she steadied him with surprising gentleness. "Why help me?" he rasped. She looked toward the horizon. "You are dying. My people do not leave others to die." Her voice carried a quiet strength. "But you will not bring soldiers to my home. Swear it." "I swear," he said weakly. She studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. "My name is Tala." That night, she led him to a cave hidden between red cliffs. There, she lit a small fire, its glow flickering across the sandstone walls. She crushed herbs, mixing them with animal fat, and pressed the paste against his bruised ribs. The pain burned, then cooled. Samuel lay back, watching her move with quiet purpose. He couldn't understand her kindness. He had been trained to see her people as the enemy, savages, rebels, threats to the new world being built. Yet here she was, saving him without asking for anything. Her eyes caught the light of the fire, and for the first time in months, he felt something he hadn't felt since before the war: peace. Days passed. His strength slowly returned. He helped gather firewood, fetch water, and clean the cave. They spoke little at first, but slowly the silence softened. She taught him words in her language: sky, river, friend. He told her stories of Virginia, of green hills and the sound of church bells in spring. At night, they listened to the wind sing through the cliffs. The world outside seemed to vanish. One evening, as the sky turned to violet and the first stars appeared, Tala sat beside him, weaving small feathers into her hair. He watched her hands move, steady, graceful, careful, as if she was crafting something sacred. He wanted to tell her how much her kindness meant to him, but words felt too small. Instead, he said quietly, "You saved my life." She looked at him and smiled faintly. "The desert saves those who listen." He frowned. "And those who don't, they become part of it." He chuckled, but her words stayed with him. Out here, the world was simple. It wasn't about flags or orders or ranks. It was about survival, about connection, about understanding something deeper than any uniform could represent. On the 7th night, as they sat by the fire, he asked, "Do you trust me, Tala?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes reflected the firelight. Then she whispered, "I trust what I see in your eyes." For now, she nodded slowly. "Trust is not forever. It is something you feed, like a fire." Samuel looked down, feeling a weight in his chest. He didn't deserve her trust, not after what men in his uniform had done to her people. But he wanted to. For the first time, he wanted to be a better man than the one the army had made him. That night, he couldn't sleep. He thought about the raids, the villages burned, the screams that haunted the edges of his memory. He remembered orders barked by men who called the Apache savages, and how easy it had been to obey without thinking. Now, As the wind howled outside the cave, he wondered which side of history he stood on. By dawn, he made a choice. He would not go back. When the sun rose, he told Tala. "I won't return to the fort," he said. "Not after this. Not after you." She looked at him for a long time, unreadable. "And what will you do?" "I'll go where I'm needed. Maybe that means helping your people. Maybe it means just not fighting anymore." A faint smile touched her lips. "Then maybe you are learning." For a week, they lived like that, two souls from different worlds, bound by silence and something unspoken. She taught him to track coyotes, to listen for the whisper of snakes beneath the sand, to move with the rhythm of the wind. He taught her English words she liked to repeat just to feel their sound: hope, promise, dream. But peace, like all things fragile, never lasts. It was near dusk when Samuel heard it, the distant thunder of hooves. He froze. Tala, sensing his tension, looked up sharply. She listened, then turned pale. "Soldiers," she said. Samuel's blood ran cold. He knew that sound. Boots, bridles, command. A cavalry patrol. His patrol. They must have tracked his horse's trail, assuming he was dead or captured. Tala grabbed his arm. "You swore." "I didn't lead them here," he said, panic rising. "I swear to you, I didn't." But the sound grew louder. The echo of shouted orders bounced off the cliffs. Dust rose beyond the ridge. There was no time to run. She pushed him toward the back of the cave. "Hide." "No." She turned on him, eyes blazing. "Do as I say." He ducked behind the rocks, heart pounding. Moments later, the first soldier entered the clearing, Lieutenant Graves, his commanding officer. His voice boomed across the stones. "Private Carter. That you, boy? We thought you were buzzard meat." Samuel stepped out slowly, hands raised. The soldiers surrounded the cave, rifles ready. Graves grinned. "Well, I'll be damned. You've been shacked up with a redskin girl, huh?" Samuel's jaw tightened. "She saved my life." Graves laughed cruelly. "Yeah, I bet she did. You know what they call that, Carter? Treason." He turned toward the cave entrance where Tala stood, silent and defiant. "We'll take her back to the fort. The colonel'll want to see what kind of woman turns a soldier soft." Samuel stepped forward. "No, she's not your prisoner." Graves raised an eyebrow. "You forget your place, Private." "I remember exactly who I am," Samuel said quietly. "A man, not a butcher." Graves' smile vanished. "Stand down, Carter." "I can't." The silence stretched, heavy as stone. Then came the command. "Seize him." Samuel moved before they could. He swung his rifle like a club, knocking one soldier to the ground. Another grabbed him from behind. Tala screamed his name. Gunfire cracked, echoing through the canyon. The smell of powder filled the air. The world spun in flashes of dust and fear. When it was over, Samuel was on his knees, his hands bound. Graves stood over him, blood on his sleeve. "She's coming with us," the lieutenant said coldly. "And you, Carter, you'll hang for desertion." Tala looked at Samuel, her face streaked with tears and dust. Her lips trembled. "You lied." "No," he choked. "I didn't. Tala, please." She shook her head, voice breaking. "I trusted you." Graves shoved her toward the horses. "Move." They rode off into the dying light, leaving Samuel bleeding in the dust, his heart shattering with every hoofbeat that faded into the horizon. Hours passed. The sky turned black. Samuel clawed at the ropes until his wrists bled, until finally he was free. He stumbled through the desert, following the tracks of the patrol. His ribs burned, his vision blurred, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. He found them by dawn, camped near the river, the soldiers asleep. Tala was tied beside a wagon, her eyes closed. Samuel crept forward, his knife trembling in his hand. One wrong step, one noise, and it would all be over. When her eyes fluttered open, she gasped softly. "You came back. I told you I wouldn't leave you," he whispered. Together, they moved silently. He cut her bonds, helped her to her feet. They were almost free when a gun cocked behind them. "Going somewhere." Graves' voice was cold as steel. Samuel turned slowly, raising his hands. "Don't do this." Graves aimed his pistol. "You had your chance to be a good soldier." Samuel met his gaze, calm. "I'd rather be a good man." The shot rang out. Tala screamed. Samuel fell, clutching his chest. He felt warmth spread under his hand, blood, hot and thick. The world tilted. He heard the chaos of shouts, the whistle of arrows, Apache warriors, emerging from the rocks, their war cries splitting the dawn. The soldiers scrambled. Graves shouted orders, but it was too late. The desert itself had come alive. Tala knelt beside Samuel as the battle raged. Her tears fell onto his face. "Don't cry," he whispered, his voice faint. "You're safe now. You shouldn't have come back. I had to. You trusted me. I couldn't let that be a lie." Her hands trembled. "You kept your word." He smiled weakly. "The desert saves those who listen." Then he was gone. When the sun rose, the fighting had ended. The soldiers were gone. Those who survived fled into the desert. Tala buried Samuel by the river, beneath the cottonwood trees. She placed his dog tag on the grave and whispered a prayer in her language. Years later, travelers spoke of an Apache woman who guarded a soldier's grave in the desert, who left fresh flowers each spring and whispered to the wind. They said sometimes, at dusk, if you listened closely, you could hear her voice. Soft, broken, but full of love. "I trusted you," she would say. "And you never broke it." And the desert, eternal and vast, carried that promise forever, proof that even in the darkest corners of history, compassion could still bloom between enemies, and trust, once given, could outlive even death itself.